you can create a hotspot on the fly for just about nothing, right? So, and then maybe the schools you're at, maybe they have Wi-Fi in the gym, so that's the other thing. Okay, you don't need a great connection because most of the stuff is very light. Okay, so again, when you go through this, you have to have kind of a process, and you want to like isolate your best passers, right? Find your best hitters, right? Outsides, blockers, so forth. Okay. So you want to categorize them, again, in your ranking sheet so that you know who you're going to start picking from and start to stick them onto the court and figure out kind of formations and how to use them. Okay, so we already went through all this. This entire section has examples, and I'm not going to go through this. If you want to read through it, you can. It's relatively complicated because I did some unusual systems. I did one where we ran a 6-2 where the middle blocker was setting. Because I had a tall girl who could set, but she didn't hit well from the outside. She hit well from the middle. So I used my short setter substituting with the middle blocker on the other side of the 6-2, right? So when the short setter came to the front, the middle blocker subbed for her. The other girl stayed in all the way around. So she was setter in the back row and the middle blocker in the front row. And then we used our libero. The libero, instead of subbing for the middle blocker, subbed for the opposites. Because the opposites were terrible in the back row. So it's like stand over there and maybe block a few balls, but otherwise don't touch the ball. Okay? Stay away from the ball. Whatever you can do. Right? And it worked out pretty well. I mean, we were very, very competitive as a team. And we ran a lot of balls right through the middle. Okay? So let me jump past all this and go to the next section. Oh, so we just talked about this whole teaching rotations idea. And again, you're going to publish that and, hand it out, either print it out or whatever methods is appropriate. I don't do this with older girls because I got tired of cleaning up the paper at the end of practice. Okay? Now I send it up in their Facebook. It's like your problem, right? Come prepared to play and know the rotations, right? So we're not going to sit here and walk through this stuff anymore because the girls are good enough to do that on their own now. And they can ask questions and all that. That's all fine. But study and be prepared for the changes. Right? Okay, so this is the next section. Okay, so when I say build from the floor up, right, we're talking about starting with tough serves, right, and becoming a very, very good serving team, okay? And I'll show you some mechanisms. In fact, you see the elastic band that's up there now. That's one of the tools we use. And that elastic band allows you to get a speed number without having a radar gun, because I'll show you how that works in a second here, okay? Because the physics of this is all the same no matter where you are. Too many animations here. Okay. All right, so we talked about this yesterday, right? Serving is the easiest skill. It's the most critical skill to get the game going. It's the only way to neutralize a tough opponent. Okay, if the other side's a pretty good team, if you serve tough, you can keep them from playing. And it happens at all levels of play. And particularly at our levels of play where sometimes there's a pretty big disparity where the other sides can really hit well. If you serve tough, you take their primary hitters out of the game, then all of a sudden it's a little bit more even. Okay? It's a little bit like if you're punch. So it makes your deal a lot better. All right, so this is the defensive side. Dig, set, spike. Okay, let's just dive in. Okay, a note about blocking, right? And I'm going to have a system at the very end here on tomorrow's thing that I will suggest you guys use. I call it the nickel defense. And the reason is that blocking is the hardest skill to learn, and it's one of the least useful. Okay? Because the problem is, at lower levels of play, the block is almost a problem than a help. You deflect so many balls off the block that could have otherwise been dug that it's like you're not helping. And the reason is the blocker is typically not penetrating over the net because they're not very high, right? So they're doing this kind of block and it's like, spraying the ball, making it fun for the back row to figure out where it's going to go. Okay? So blocking, hard skill to learn and very ineffective in general. And if the hitter is not very good anyway, they don't even see the block. They're just swinging at the ball, and it's just an accident. Whatever happens is an accident, right? So sort of don't help them be better by getting in their way. Don't touch the ball that's on their way out. That kind of stuff, okay? Okay, so we already talked about all this stuff about yesterday about show don't tell, your keys, right? Very compact phrases to use, feet to ball. And the other thing is about, again, we talked about before about full speed. So let's do serving, right? And this is the part where I'm really a Nazi about serving, because I want to make sure that people are consistent and don't do dumb things serving. And one of the first dumb things is, get to the point where we don't dump balls into the net. Okay? Get it over the net. All right? So if you got to underhand the ball to do that, fine. But let's not be serving into the net. Okay?
So in a given 90-minute practice,
Huh? Well, I mean, it depends on where you guys are starting. I dedicate half the practice to serving. Yeah. And, because you're serving, put somebody on the other end of the serve. Let them pass the serve, right? And, this statting drill is not going to go very fast initially, so it's going to eat up half your practice anyway. Right, so work on the mechanics of serving, and once they got decent with the mechanics, and really make it competitive, where they're trying to do something with the ball. Right, so it's a kind of a layered thing. And you know what? You can also do this drill where they're serving from inside the court because they're not very good yet, and so it can still accomplish the goal and start picking up the mechanics and gradually move it back. And don't forget, right, the fist is a big help. That's going to add about 10 more feet to that serve, without any kind of improvement in physical skill. Okay, so the fist serve is a big deal. Okay, so this is what I like to serve and teach serving. It's called deep lane serving. The lanes are the spaces between the players. Okay, now, it may turn out that you're not playing in a situation like this where you got, 3 receivers, but in that context, I just want you to kind of understand how the math works, okay? What we're going to do is, in fact, let's turn around here for a second. Okay, so you see this elastic band here, and I'm going to get my aid. This elastic band is something you buy at the fabric store in a roll, so to keep your pants up. You take a carabiner, and I put a little bit of a rubber band on it because that gives you a little bit more traction so it doesn't slide off. Okay. You just tape it onto here, wrap it around and tape it. And then you take this thing and you don't do that with it. You try to move this thing up. Okay? So you move that thing up. Not quite at the top, but close. Okay? So you create a gap between here and here. Now, this is a little harder for the young guys. And if you guys will come over to this side just for a second, you can see what the other thing I've set up. This is a little bit more lenient, right? It's a little higher. And you can run a string across the top of that thing. Okay? I tie the string to the net over the top and back over to the other side. And it's built like this. What are these things? Tent poles. Tent poles, about $8, right? And it's like this, and it's like magic, right? Okay. And then put a little Velcro or tape it to the net, right? Okay. So I like cheap gadgets, and anything to help the process. That makes a little bit better box to serve through. It's a little easier for the kids. This is fine for more advanced players where they have velocity. And then what we do is with this, we put fake players out here. Looks like this. There'll be 3 of them, right? And the idea is to serve between back here. Okay? Now, for the ball to make it through that gap and get past this chair, it goes about 37 miles an hour. Okay? And that's why we use a radar gun to check. But once you put a radar gun on this, you know pretty much how that thing calibrates. Okay? So it's a great way to get a number just by knowing the distance from there to here and being low. The physics of it is that if it clears through that gap, and makes it all the way back here. That's about how hard you got to hit the ball. Okay. Now that may be kind of outside, your level of play, but it's just something to think about as a way of getting a range, and also a method for teaching how to serve low. But at our level, we still create a penalty, which is you hit the net, you're still going to do your pancakes or your push-ups or whatever, right? So you want to be tight to that net, but you want to be conservative, maybe go over that tape sometimes rather than hit into the net, right? So that's how you kind of teaching the players to judge that process. Does that make sense? Yes.
Some of the younger ones, they can just start serving
Inside.
inside.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where.
Right.
Obviously, that changes the one right
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? They're not going to be serving that fast anyway. And this is more like a guide. I prefer using that thing for the younger players so that they think about a box and they visualize the box in their head. So get it through the box. Yeah. So initially it's just get the ball over the net, right? And then as their performance increases, then create targets, because more concrete targets create focus. And it's, again, mindfulness, right? It's more challenging to put it through the box than to just put it in the court, right? So you got to figure out the next challenge, and there's ways to do that. Okay, and that's just a way to do that. And this is the next level above that. If you got teams that are serving pretty well, then you can try this, because this will definitely ratchet up the game. Okay, the kids will really start to see how hard they have to serve to get that ball through there and back here. It's challenging. It's really challenging. Okay? Questions? All right. But again, you want to dedicate a lot of time to serving, right? Because it's going to make or break your team. And then if you're serving, put somebody on the other side, right? Receiving that serve, and just get that processing. Then create all kinds of games. Scoring systems are great, right? And so, serving game against, servers against passers, right? And you keep a score. Oh, no. You got to mix it up. I mean, you want to play, right? Playing is important. So, play short court volleyball. Have fun, right? Inject the ball, right? Do that for a while and then go back to serving, right? So break it up. I do a lot of this. My girls love around the world. Okay, so it's like that's like the present. So like, okay, you crank on this next drill, right, and work hard for the next 15 minutes, and then we'll do around the world for a while. That's your gift, right? Huh? That's the rotation thing, right? The continuous rotation drill, right? That's around the world. So we do that drill. So it's a thing about like give them a little gift, right? And that's just a fun game. And you can do it in any kind of format you want, and you can do, the continuous injecting the ball, corrections, whatever, right? And the kids will start giving you preferences.
So once the serving is decent,
Yeah.
how much time do you dedicate then? Still have to practice?
Well, you got to decide what the next issue is, right? So it's volleyball is the weakest link, right? So what's the next weak link? Because you're going to go up that chain, right? There's a pyramid there, and it breaks someplace along that line. You just keep going, This is like a Maslow,
Never always keeping the bottom ones in routine.
Yes, you got to keep them in the routine so they don't lose, and there's always room to improve, right? So you want to keep getting that better, while you're making the next level of investment. Make sense? Okay, so let's see what else we got up here. Do you guys want to try this for a second? Throw your arms on? Okay, so this next section is a little bit about tactics, and I think again you got to remember, right, what the side out thing looks like. Okay, if you got a really low side outing team on the other side, boy, don't miss serves. Forget about blasting the ball, just put it in. Take your gun server who's a little off today and have her just serve underhand. Right, just keep the ball in, because you got to play volleyball. You got to have rallies, right, in order to get better. So let's not just be blasting balls out and in the net, whatever. Dial it back and let's get back in the game. Okay. So do what you can, but keep track of what your opponent looks like, because otherwise, man, you're just letting the game get away. You're giving it away, right? It's like, how many errors did you give them? And we'll see. We'll see that in the next round when I give you this like easy serving thing. This drill is just a point scoring thing, and you can just read it about how you want to make points. But again, it's up to you. Decide the point structure to create the right incentives, right? So, if you want to keep them out of the net, a combination of a consequence and a big negative point, get them to think about not doing certain things, right? So drive them towards the area you want by providing more points there, and then away from certain things by providing more negative points to the other side, okay? So point structures are designed to do that. All right, so we went through serving stuff yesterday, so this isn't such a big deal. And then this is just a score sheet for it. Okay, so now we're going kind of the next phase, right, about the attitude part of this thing. And so if you're doing a receiving drill, like I said before, you can assign some pretty big negatives for not touching the ball. Okay, not doing this, 3 people staring at the ball hit the floor, right? So again, point structures can help drive that, and then you want to continue to drive that thing where it's like, you know what, if nobody dives for the ball, everybody dives for the ball, okay? So that's the way you drive that process, right? So continue to build that mindset and chuck some balls in occasionally just to make sure people are reacting to it, right? And you want to see people doing that. And again, don't forget to celebrate, right? You see somebody go pancake the floor for a ball that's way out of reach, celebrate, because you want to reward effort, and everybody should be doing that, okay? Okay, we talked about this. Oh yeah, this is an interesting thing. And some of this stuff has actually gotten a little bit more. I'm reading the next level of this 10,000 hour rule. That's a little interesting, but I won't go there. How many of you have read Outliers or any of those books? So they talk about 10,000 hours to becoming an expert, basically, in a particular area. And there was actually a really interesting study quoted in there, which was about these Hungarian sisters who their parents, well, it's really, really weird. So this guy wants to conduct this experiment. He puts a want ad in a Ukrainian paper, and he says, I want to marry somebody who wants to have kids with me and conduct this experiment. So this woman volunteers, and they have 3 girls, and then he says, what are we going to make them experts at? Oh, let's try chess. Okay? So at an early age, the girls are taught chess, 3 girls, and all of them reach master status. It turns out the youngest kid, who's the laziest, turns out to be the best player, but she doesn't try very hard. Right? Because the other kids are much more into it. But they were just trying to prove this point, which is, can you study your way into expertise? And it's fascinating. I mean, it's just like the most bizarre, experiment. And they succeeded. So it's like, hey, there you go. Part of it was the idea that if you start early, right, and practice a lot, by the time you reach a certain age, you start to reach these 10,000 hour numbers. So by the time they got to about 18 and 19, they had already reached that number, and they accomplished a certain world, level status. So it's kind of amazing. Okay, so we talked about this, right? No ball hits the floor without someone else hitting the floor. And then, the slide drill that we talked about again, right? Yesterday, go to your knees and then go to the floor. All right. We also talked yesterday about facing the ball. And let's spend the next couple minutes in this section doing this, because I'll show you how badly this doesn't work for most times, okay? So yesterday we did this thing where we tossed the ball and we, always facing the ball, right? Okay? So let's set up 6 people over here. And you'll see how the mechanics of this work or don't work, all right? So 6 people over here. Yeah, we need 6, okay? Now we're gonna complicate this slightly. Let's see. William, you can set okay, right? You're okay setting, right? Okay, so let's start you out like, let's put you in a weird spot. Let's put you back here. Let's switch. Okay, and so let's get back like we're kind of receiving. Come on back. So let's do like a 5-person receive, like a W, and you're going to come off the side over there. So you're standing right here. We're going to do old school volleyball here. So you're going to come off the side there and come up to the front to set, okay? So I'm going to toss the ball, and now here's what we're talking about, okay? Your objective is to face the ball, okay? So I'm going to do, face the ball. Ready? Here we go. Okay, so we're trying to get William to set the ball. Okay, so get out of his way unless he asks you to help. Turn around. Right? Ready? Yeah, so pass the ball to here. Okay? We want a 3 pass. All right, here we go. All right. That's pretty good, right? People are turning. All right. Second request now is, get back. Second request is stop your feet just before the ball makes contact with the player. Okay? Stop your feet just before the ball makes contact with the player. Okay? Here we go. Watch again. Okay? It's okay. Here we go. Good. Okay. Here's what happens a lot in volleyball. Particularly when you're running a rotation where the setter needs to get to a spot. Okay? The entire fixation is to get from here to the spot. Okay? But what happens is the ball's being passed and you're still moving. Right? And so a lot of times you see the